My name's Sugi Yamagawa, and this is a fun little video about me talking about my experience building the EPA woodshed. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. And also, this is going to be a bit of a slideshow thing. So, step one, gotta have lumber. Gotta have materials before you can do anything else. For me, I am using Eastern Red Cedar lumber that I acquired from a local sawmill, and I also picked up additional materials for other projects during this run. Because as you can see, I'm using a U-Haul, but the pricing of the actual lumber itself was like really good, really worth it. So once you gather your materials, next step is going to be cutting them to length, which I actually did that on a stream and pretty much dimensioned everything out. There's actually a full list in the build plans provided by the EPA, so you can just cut everything to that. So let's start getting into some of the more fun stuff. So step one is select your site. Now, see, as you can see, I've got a little too much goldenrod here that's going to go the way of the dodo quickly. And I also have my patio stones. So from there, go ahead and clear out the area, which I did with a weed eater. And so a bit of a side about this part of the process. I set all these stones, leveled them to each other, and honestly, don't do it the way I did it, because this is like a lot of work to do it this way. I'm going to talk a little bit more about leveling your foundation or leveling the woodshed later, but for now, if you're to go and build this yourself, don't worry too much about getting everything super level at this point in time or in like the exact spot, because like every time you like fudge one stone, move it a little bit, then you have to like check it to the others that are nearby, and it's just a lot of work. I probably spent like close to 2 to 3 hours just trying to set these stones the way I did it. So I'm going to talk about the better way to do it a little bit. So here I am lining up my 2x6 and also just seeing where I also need to put foundation stones. And then from there, I am lining up where I need to put my holes. So I'm going to be carriage bolting my beams to the 2x6, which is like the main like support for like the floor and stuff. So I am basically setting that along my stones as they're all lined up, and then because those are going to tell me where my posts are going to go, and then I can like pre-mark everything out. So if you look real closely, you'll see 2 small holes on the top and bottom. Those are going to be important later, but also this is just, I countersinked, which is like this hole with, well, the smaller hole inside is for the bolt thread for the carriage bolt, and the outer one is for the head of the carriage bolt. It's actually really all not that important to do it like that, but I just did it because I thought it would look better. You could skip that if you don't do it. So I am also taking the time to reinsert some screws for the floor joists that are going to hold these two, well, the 2 main 2x6s, because there's one in the front, one in the back. But those are going to be the things that are going to hold it in the other direction, which gets us to this point. So as you see, we have a box. Now, back to like setting like the posts and such. Well, your foundation stones. Go ahead, just get them like roughly where things are gonna be. Then build to this point. At least get something of a foundation, and then use that to set and level everything. You could also, when you start like inserting the posts, you can easily pick this up by yourself by hand, and you can level your floor that way versus having to level the stones themselves. Leveling the stones is a little bit more, how do I say, bulletproof, because everything is level from there. But this is a simple woodshed. You don't have to get like super complicated with it. Don't worry about it. Then from this point, you measure from each diagonal, because we have a box, we got 2 diagonals. The purpose of this is to make sure that our little rectangle is square, that these 90-degree angles are 90-degree angles, and we're good there. So next up is starting to put in some of the top roof supports. So each side will get 1 2x4. So real easy, real simple stuff. Now, going back to positioning these foundation posts, foundation block was a little off, so I just notched the 2x4 here. But if you build it, honestly, the better solution is to just move the cinder block underneath closer to where it fits, like in the nut. Don't worry about doing things like that. But yeah, so here's me using cutoffs from when I first cut these posts down the size to get my spacing for my next piece of the floor. I didn't use the full size ones, because if I use the full size ones, well, the back ones are, no, the front ones are 6 feet tall. The back ones are like 5.5 feet tall. A little big, a little awkward. Use the smaller ones to get your spacing. And then do that for the other side, then for the middle. And then once you have like your void between, well, your like left and right side, then you just gotta slap down the 2x4 roughly in the center. Pretty simple stuff, pretty straightforward. Then for here, this is me setting the 4x4 framing post, and I was pre-drilling. I set it in the spot where it's going to go, and then I basically drilled through the 2x6 into it just to mark my holes, to know where I had to put holes, because I am drilling straight through the 4x4 post. Now, next part, fun part, kind of, sort of, is plumbing the post. This can be a little tricky, however, though, it's not really all. It's a little finicky, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. But yeah, you might be able. Well, actually, let's go to the next one. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So those 2 yellow deck screws you see in this photo, those are what you do once you get it roughly plumbed. You use to hold it in position. Then later on, you can worry about carriage bolting. The carriage bolt is going to support most of the weight later, but it doesn't necessarily have to support it now. That's what the deck screws are for. So, and then you just basically go through, plumb posts, all that fun stuff, and you get the post done. Next step is adding the what's basically going to be the rest of the floor. These are 1x4 boards, and I actually used scrap offcut pieces to determine my spacing here. So and see, it's 6 boards. Just space them however though you want to do. You can measure it out. Just for me, I really like using like scrap lumber, because that just gives me a nice uniform spacing, and it's just like really easy. So then I just go through and tack everything down. I actually started off using screws for this, but I actually switched to nails because I have nails and I wanted to get rid of some. I don't typically use nails on my project, so. And then there's kind of like the zoomed out view of everything. Look, so we've got our foundation. So let's start building a little bit up. So going on the building up part, a good thing to do is take if you have a good decent sized piece of scrap plywood, put it on your floor, so that way you have like a work platform. because it is very easy to step through the slats on the floor of this woodshed. And these slats are also and they're designed to be open like that in order for it to have airflow. So for the side slats, I'm basically kind of doing the same thing I was doing with the floor slats earlier, and that's just using a thing as a spacer. I used a scrap of OSB I had lying around, but as we'll see here in a little bit, it was a little too long. It was, I think, like 9 inches and 1/4. And yeah, you want to use something a little bit not as tall. Also, it helps hold the slats up while you're attaching them. So the EPA recommends 2 people working together to build this. I'm just one guy, so I had to just solo it. And having that piece of wood to set my spacing and to help support was a great thing for me. Do one side, finish up the next. Here you can actually see how nicely that plywood platform helping me not have my feet fall through. But yeah, get one side, do the next, and then the back. Oh, next up is the roof. Now the roof can be a little bit tricky, and as you can see, the very topmost slat really got a little too close to where I was putting these roof rafters and made things a little tricky for myself. So yeah, definitely don't go as like wide of a spacing with your slats as I did. But basically, you're building the frame out of 2x4s, and each post is going to get 2 on either side, and then there's going to be one that runs along the back. Then there's going to be one that runs along the front for the roof rafters. So what I'm doing here is, as you can see, I've already got the back one done, and I've got my ones that go up towards the front. So what I'm doing here for the front one, since there's nothing really to like support it or hold it while I attach it, I am using it to get my screw holes. So I pre-drill those holes, and then I insert my screws. And with that, it makes actually attaching it really easy by having all the screws, having holes pre-drilled, screws pre-inserted, all that fun stuff. This means you kind of got to hold it up, start getting a couple screws in it, and then once you have like 2 or 3 screws, that's enough to hold it while you get the rest in. So getting that work done beforehand helps a lot. And sometimes some of the boards have, I think, a little bit of a curve to them. Hey, it's a woodshed, who cares? Re-drill the hole, reinsert a screw, not a big problem. So, last but not least is, and kind of be, this was one of the more challenging aspects of this build, was the roof. So I'm using painted roofing material. So what I've done here is I basically positioned all my metal up on the top of the woodshed, and I basically got it to the point where I was happy with it, where I had enough overhang on the back, the front, all that fun stuff. And then I took a marker down it and marked where I was happy with it. So that way, if I ever bumped a piece or it slid while I was trying to attach the other pieces, hey, it won't do anything weird on me. Because I've actually got this set up to, these are 3 pieces of 6 feet long roofing material. And I've got it set up where I've got about like 10 inches of overhang on both front and back to help protect the firewood from the rain and stuff like that. So kind of like zooming out, you can kind of see that I've got a little bit of a sag with the metal roof on the eave off to the side. Not worried about it, and I can actually say now, since I spent so much time procrastinating on this project, that even with a good 8 inches of snow on top of this, Yeah, it's not sagging any more than that. So basically here I am using a tape measure, and I am also using roofing screws. So these are screws that are inch and a quarter, inch and a half long, and they have a washer with a gasket. And these are basically like standard roof screws. They're really great for attaching roofing metal to a wood platform, but this was a really challenging part of the build, but I eventually got everything needed. Well, I eventually got things where I wanted them. But yeah, as you can see here, I'm using the tape measure to decide how far I am from my, basically lining up my screw with where it's going to hit a roof rafter. So here is the MVP of getting the getting these screws into this roofing metal, because if you've ever tried to put screws in the metal, yeah, screws don't like to go in the metal very well. So down here you can see my awl, and I basically grabbed a hammer and kind of hit the end of the awl with the hammer just to give me a real small pilot hole. And with that, I was able to get, because once I had like a small like dimple hole in the roofing material, I was able to zip screws into that, and it was great. So I just did like a row of screws across the front, or a row of screws on the bottom, on top of all the like little like ridge pieces on the metal you see here. And then I did a couple like in the center. So you don't have to get like too complicated. I mean, you can put as many screws in as you want, but I felt like this was more than sufficient for this application. So, and also this is also a picture of all the tools for getting the roof done. But yeah, there it is, the completed project, the EPA woodshed. It honestly looks really amazing, and unfortunately, the cedar wood, yeah, all those beautiful like red purple hues, that's just going to turn into a brown color with time, which by now it's several months later since I've actually built this, and so yeah, it's since faded away from that beautiful color. But I do have it mostly filled with firewood. It is doing an excellent job of keeping my wood dry compared to having it in a pile underneath a tarp, which you can kind of see off to the side there. So yeah, this is just me yapping a little bit and kind of going through my build process and how I built the EPA woodshed. And yeah, thanks for watching.